and welcome to The Tracks of My Tears, a brand new podcast about music. My name is Nancy Elliott, I'm a psychotherapist and I believe that music is therapy. And that's why I'm going to be talking to artists, musicians, celebrities, singer-songwriters about how music impacts them and how music has influenced their lives and their relationships. I have the absolute pleasure of being with a lady today who talks to us about what it's like to be hopelessly in love. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I introduce you to the formidable lovers rock queen, undisputed, Miss Caroll Thompson.
When I first met Dennis Brazil, I said, see that bass line of yours is trouble, that bass line.
Listen, that bass line.
I'm in love. I'm hopelessly in love.
Hi, this is Caroll Thompson, and you're watching the Tracks of My Tears podcast. Don't miss it.
Well, Caroll Thompson, it's such a pleasure to meet you. They call you the Queen of Lovers Rock. Yes. How does it feel to be called the Queen of Lovers Rock?
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. That's good to hear. I mean, I think we like to be called queens, us ladies.
Yeah,
anyway,
we're
so
all
that's
queens,
good.
all
We
of us.
are.
We all.
But you in particular have a queenly sort of legacy. You've done a lot.
Yeah, I have, that's true.
And you've worked with people like Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder. Not many people can say that.
No, it's wonderful. I feel blessed about that. And
Yeah.
it was a privilege and a real insight.
I can imagine.
To work with people that you've always admired and people who have done so much and have been great creators. So sometimes I wonder, wow, how did that happen? But I'm really pleased that it did.
There aren't many of us that are classically trained on the piano. Caribbean, Jamaican descent.
I guess it might be true. There weren't many of my friends at the time that were learning Schubert and Chopin and Mozart, which is true.
Yeah.
But I had a classical piano teacher. So a lot of my friends learnt at church and they learnt by ear and they're fantastic musicians. So they never had to bother about reading music, learning notation. So they just got straight in, learnt how it felt to make the music, worked out the chords and just were exceptionally gifted musicians. So a lot of the musicians that I've worked with for my generation just came via that route and were just blessed and gifted and learnt how to play music and learnt how to play it well. My grandmother, she wanted to be able to tell her friends that that I am learning to read music, you know. So for her it was a big thing that she could tell her friends that I'm learning to read music and reel me out with a piece of music and make me play, you know, in front of her friends, reading music, so that she for her it really was an ego trip. But it doesn't matter, you know, I went down that route.
It's really impressive. I think your grandmother was on the right track there. I mean, I think particularly when we think of lovers rock, we don't often think of classically trained musicians.
No.
I'm not a musician. I'm not a singer. I'm not creative in that way. So when I heard you talking about crafting a song and with such technical language about a song, I was like, no, how did she give birth to such an organic piece of art like the Hopelessly in Love, which was so emotive and so passionate and so surrendered. For me, there was no thinking there. That was just like, I'm just saying how it is, you know. But then you start talking about music in such a technical way. I was like, how do you get those two together?
I'm, you know, quite a train spotter. A bit nerdy.
Yeah, I can see that, but so is your husband. but you're still, you guys are cool. But I'm like, these two people need to be on, like, you know, University Challenge right now because you're very, very, very intellectual.
Yeah, we're very nerdy. I mean, my husband's already been on University Challenge, actually. Right, but I guess it was a meeting of minds, being in touch with my emotions. I'm quite emotional. I'm very sensitive, but quite wired for intellect as well. And I do enjoy the intellectual challenges. So I noticed that a lot when I was at school, that I enjoyed that rigour, that intellectual rigour. I enjoyed sport, but I also enjoyed the kind of mushiness of music and how it affects you. The effect of music on the emotion is something that has always intrigued me, and still does. When I hear certain artists, I get affected by it.
Yeah.
So I've recognised that I'm not. I do have the two things that run concurrently, and I've just accepted that that's how I'm wired.
Yeah. You know, when you're driven intellectually or wired that way, it can be quite demanding in a way. And then when you're wired sort of more creatively and you're not a big thinker, that can also have its demands. You know, you need to focus sometimes, you need to think. So I think it's a really nice balance. You get to tune out of one, tune into the other. Does it feel like that?
Yeah. Okay. So I've learned how to switch one side off and not merge the two.
Okay. So is that something you do consciously?
I've learned emotional intelligence. If I'm in a creative mode, I ensure that I create a situation so that I can just be totally creative. I really enjoy the zone where you're just, because none of us really know where this energy comes from. None of us really know what opens up for us to be able to come up with a line, come up with a melody, come up with the idea for an arrangement. None of us really know where that actually comes from, but we know that it's almost like a portal you have to open, and you have to surrender to it and not be afraid of it, and just allow stuff to happen and enjoy that process. So when I'm in that zone, I love it, because I'm really not thinking about anything else apart from how do I express this emotion that I'm feeling musically? How do I put into words what I'm feeling to actually express that emotion, to articulate it? And so you have to surrender to that. So, and I enjoy that mode and I enjoy that zone. So I'm not really thinking about anything else apart from really the depth of the feeling.
The depth of the feeling.
Yeah, which is really important. So if you allow yourself to go there, then you can then express it. But you cannot sit there and analyze it. You have to feel it and then say, find the colours, find the words, just like an artist finds the colours. You know, it's all just expression. And because I enjoy it and I know I can do it, I have to just relax and let it happen. And I'm not really into drugs and stuff like that. So I find that if I relax enough and allow myself to fall into that feeling, I can get on with it.
Not to be afraid of it. So is there something a little bit scary about that process?
I think some people are really afraid to touch their emotions.
Yeah.
They're really afraid to cry, really afraid to be angry, to allow that feeling to wash over you. Some people are unable to do that. I found from a very early age that I was able to do that. I was able to make myself cry with a thought. From a very early age, I could do that. And I could actually take myself through a whole journey of, okay, if I do this, that might happen. How am I going to feel about that? Oh my God, that might hurt a little bit, but let's just go with that hurt and work it through and come back around. I don't know how, but I was able to do that from a very early age and be very cognizant about it from very early. So then I realised that, okay, actually I can do this. This is, you know, just to know that actually knowing of yourself and knowing what you can do.
Yeah. If you want perspective on something, you need distance, because you have to, you know, be able to look at the thing.
Yes.
And that's analysis. You need to look at the thing. But if you want to really heal something, you need connection. So you need to get right on top of it. And that, I thought, was kind of sounds like what you're saying about that process.
Yeah, you do. You need to.
You have to be right with it.
You have to be with it and walk with it.
Yeah.
And accept it.
And let it take you where it's going to take you.
And let it take it where it's going to take you. And for me, emotional trip is about the trip I take to write a song.
As the creator, does it inspire you while you're creating it? It's like...
Yeah. Okay. It's satisfying. As I say, I always follow the joy, right? And it's satisfying for me to have a feeling which is universal, because we're all human, we're all connected. So what I'm feeling is no different from what you've felt or anybody else has felt at some point or may feel in the future at some point. So it's satisfying to know that I have a feeling or an emotion and I'm able to articulate it, express it in a musical zone. The same way, as I said, a painter or a sculptor might have a theme and say, well, this thing that I'm creating, this piece of art I'm creating, this is a theme. And then when they tell you the theme, it's like, oh yeah, I can feel that.
Yeah.
Those colours or that shape really actually affects me in a way. So for me as a music creator, it is satisfying to have a theme, a musical, an emotional theme, and then to be able to find the words, the melody, the production. It's just a great trip. The melody, the lyric, the production, the arrangement, that can embody that feeling for me, and that will hopefully touch the nerve of another human being. For me, it's a gift. It's a real blessing to be able to do that.
It is. Again, the podcast, it's all about how we are affected by songs. Their lyrics, the feeling, the emotion, and also your delivery. That's another thing. You deliver your songs in a certain way. And Hopelessly in Love, it's so vulnerable. You just go for it.
No, it's like being a little bit pregnant, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. So it's like if you're in love, if somebody has affected you so deeply and you have lost all your guard, that you are like a baby, you've got to that point where you are jelly, then that's what it is. It doesn't have to be a permanent state, but for that period of time it is that state. And one is just hopeful that the person who's made you feel that way is not awful. Hopeful that you're hopeful that person is reciprocal, that person will at least look after you or look after that vulnerability. Sometimes you're fortunate, sometimes you're not.
The reason I think of that song as therapy is because, one of the things I learned when I first trained as a therapist a long time ago is stay with the client. Like if they're saying, I would just love him so much, even though he's like really awful, you don't say, yes, but don't you think he should be treating you? You stay there and say, yes, well, that must, how is that for you? How does it feel to love him? You don't go further, even though you're thinking, for God's sake, woman, this man, whatever. And that's what the song does. It stays right where we are. It doesn't ask us to analyse the love. It doesn't ask us to think about who we're in love with. It doesn't ask us to judge ourselves. It's just like, you're okay, you're in this place. And it's so soothing.
Well, it wasn't conscious, I'm just saying, but I stayed in the moment. I was in the moment, and at that moment, that is exactly how it felt. It's important to be honest as an artist. And what it is what it is. Those who feel it. Those who don't. But at least I believe in honesty of the emotion, and that's what that was.
Is that song about your husband?
No, but it has now become about him.
Diplomatic. Very good. Because I do wonder, about that process for creative people and artists. You sing from your soul.
Yeah.
And then you have this wonderful relationship now, and then, but that was then, and he's listening to you singing, he's like, but you are singing about him now. I think that's how emotion is, isn't it? I mean, I've had the same song for a few boyfriends, it go. Meant that for
They're
that
transferable.
one. Exactly. Yes, that's really good. As you know, Caroll, the podcast is called The Tracks of My Tears.
Yes.
And, songs like Hopelessly in Love and I'm So Sorry and all of the other songs, even the songs you've covered, have very much been the tracks of our tears.
Right.
And I wonder, what is the track or the tracks of your tears?
I'm a great Randy Crawford fan.
Me too.
Early album she made called Raw Silk. And I can honestly say that album is like the tracks of my tears. That album has so many songs that when I rediscovered that album after many years of not listening to it, I can honestly say I sat down and started crying when I heard that album, because it took me right back to my teenage days and hearing those songs. She did a version of Endlessly.
Yes.
She did
that's Brooke Benton, isn't it?
Yeah, an old Brooke Benton song that she did in her own style.
Love that.
There was a song called Love's Beginning. I mean, the whole album was so embryonic. Wasn't overproduced. She just racked up in the studio and she just sang these songs, and they were all very heart-wrenching. So that album there is definitely, I would say, at least 50% the tracks of my tears.
I love it. What is it about love and Caroll Thompson?
Bob Marley says there's one love, but it expresses itself in so many ways. You know, love that was hurtful, love that was beautiful, love that was sexy, love that was between you and your children, you know, love between yourself and your mother, love between yourself and your father, love between yourself and your sisters. You know, it permutates in so many ways. And I just think yes, it is one love, but the way it's expressed is so amazing. There's like a myriad of ways in which love presents itself. So yeah, it will forever be of interest to me and most human beings. You know, so
I mean, I can see that. I can see you like in the laboratory of love, you know, with your white coat, and sometimes you're creating it and sometimes you're studying it, but I just think your relationship with love is so interesting to someone who's looking at you and, you know, trying to understand a bit about who is the woman beneath the artist.
Because it's so powerful.
Yeah, it's everything in a way.
Yeah, it's really powerful. It can completely eradicate so many things. You know, So I find, you know, the most important thing for me, I find that love is patience.
I remember actually when I went to school and my first ever slow dance was with this young person. It was, what's it called? Commodore's Night Shift.
Oh, yes.
You know? On the night shift. Do you remember your song that you first danced to with somebody?
There's two actually. The first one that comes to mind that I ever was held by a guy, right? And in such close proximity. We hadn't kissed or anything like that. It was the first time I was actually in that space with a young boy. And we actually, same thing, we went around in circles to Loving You by Minnie Riperton.
Beautiful one.
And then the first song that I actually was on a wall with, you know, because back in the day we used to stand up and rub off wallpaper, right? So it was After Tonight by Matumbi.
Oh my gosh, what a tune!
When I first met Dennis Goodwin, I said, see that bass line of yours, you trouble that bass line.
Listen, that bass line. But you know, it's so funny when you talk about the wallpaper, because it really brings back memories when I was little, because my dad owned the All Nations Club.
Oh wow, I remember All Nations.
You haven't forget.
Yeah.
It's one of those, even if one wants to forget, they're not going to forget it, are they? The basement. But I remember we would go in there and literally we would have to repaint the basement often because there'd be all these...
That's so funny.
You know?
No, really, we were on the walls, right?
That's...
And that was my first proper rub was with After Tonight. But the first time I was ever in somebody's arms was with Loving You, was Minnie Riperton,
You know, if the idea is that songs are therapy... And you have been doing some analysis of what components, you know, make a good song. Have you found a formula?
No, there is no one formula. Because there's quite a few things that have to come together to make it work. A lot of the times it could be just the mood of the song. Sometimes it can definitely be the words. Sometimes it can just, that people will just hum a melody and it will make them happy or it will make them cry. The melody alone. So then you have happy music. You have music that you want to get up and do Candy, like we spoke about the other day. You get up and you just want to. You hear a beat and you just want to dance. And it's music is escapism, right? So it can take you away from whatever situation you're in, mood you're in, or it can put you into mood. You know, you can put on Marvin Gaye and you're in a different zone. Right, I can put on Earth, Wind and Fire and I'm in a whole different mood, you know, Let's Groove Tonight. I can put on Burning Spear and I'm somewhere else. I can put on Bob Marley and I'm somewhere else, and then you put on Dennis Brown and it's over for me, right? Because I'm such a Dennis Brown fan, right? And then, you know, you have people like the Emotions, Jones Girls, you know. Then you'd have someone like D'Angelo, which is he creates a whole mood. So certain songs and certain artists create a mood, or certain songs can create a mood. So there's no one formula. It's really a magic. It's magic. It's just magic, and that's why it's so amazing, because it's a magic that I don't believe AI will ever be able to reproduce. They can reproduce, but they cannot create. I don't think they can create magic.
No.
I still think you need that human element to create authentic innovations. Because I think if there was one formula, somebody would have cracked it already.
You see these record companies, don't you? You do get these fantastic writers. You're one of them.
Thank you.
And you can almost churn them out.
Yes.
So you think, is it just that you just have a gift where you're channeling them out, or have you found some sort of formula where you think, right, if I do this, speak about this, then I can create a good song?
Yes, but you can do all of that, but you still have to find the voice that will carry the spirit and the energy to make it happen, right? So yes, you can get a bunch of writers like you did back in the day, Tim Panally, you know, or people who want to create adverts or just create music. You can get producers and writers together to create formulaic stuff, and that's very easy to do. You do that. Library music do it all the time. But in terms of finding an artist, whether it's just someone like George Benson who plays the guitar, or you find a vocalist that can actually, I hope that's not me, a vocalist that can translate the feeling through the vibration of that voice, that's a whole different thing. So that has to go on top of a bunch of writers and producers. You still have to find the voice.
And it still all has
right?
to align,
And it has to all come together.
I was horrified when I discovered that Barry Manilow didn't write Mandy. Because, as you're saying, as you're describing, you know, I watched a documentary about him, and there's this writer and there's this composer and there's this producer of the day, and they all came together and they were looking, I think they asked somebody else at first, but then they came to him.
Yeah.
And it's so clear that that is his song.
Yes.
You know, so it is really quite an endeavour, I think, when it's not that organic, when it's a bunch of people creating. You know, you just got to get that right. But they do so many times, don't they?
They do get it. I mean, so ever so often, the singer or the performer gets the song and the production that works. Who would have thought that Whitney Houston singing Dolly Parton's country and western "I Will Always" turns it into this epic, multi-million song that every time she sings it, it sounds like she had written that song, that it's coming from a personal place, that she actually penned it herself. Who would believe that she's just a singer of songs? But that song somehow resonated with her personality, whether she liked it or not at the time. She was able to perform it and deliver it in such a way that touched the world, the globe. So, as I said, you know, you can get as many people in a room writing as many formulaic songs as possible, but unless they find the right voice to perform that song, it's not going anywhere. It's just a demo.
So, Caroll, can you tell me what's on your playlist at the moment? Top 3.
At the moment, I've kind of gone back.
Yeah.
So I've been listening to the Isley Brothers.
Nice.
I'm very connected to Drifting on a Memory.
Oh, that's nice.
I just absolutely adore that song. I can play it on rotation. Lionel Richie and the Commodores. A song called Say Yes.
Yeah. That's a good song.
Yes, a lovely song. And the other song on my playlist is a Bob Marley song, which I totally love, which is Turn Your Lights Down Low.
Nice one.
So those are the top 3 on my playlist at the moment. Sometimes I go back and I just kind of dig up stuff that really affects me, and also endlessly with Randy Crawford.
Such a deep, passionate woman. Really, I do. I really see that. I really feel that.
Okay.
I think that's not something everybody has. That sort of depth and passion for just sort of love and relationships and life. It's really nice to experience.
Yeah, I do experience life on that level. I'm very passionate and I like people. I really do.
They don't scare
and
you.
No, I believe essentially people are good. They are, you know, and it's just some of the things that life throws at people that kind of take them off center.
Yeah.
But generally, most people want to be loved and they want to be appreciated and they want to be respected.
Absolutely.
And they want to feel that they will be missed if they're not around. I just believe in kindness. I just be kind. And most of the people that I work with, I'm just kind to them. Sometimes they are really troubled. Sometimes they are really difficult. But over my few years on this planet, I have found that if I'm kind, that I tend to get the best out of most people.
I guess that goes back to what you were saying about love being patient.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously I talk to people all the time. And I just feel that there's such an openness about you. You know, if you could see energies, we would probably see this sort of energy flowing from you, because it's very easy to be with you. And I'm sure that quality has something to do with your ability to create such great songs. The openness, the receptivity to life, you know.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of life.
Yeah, I feel that.
I don't fear anything.
Yeah.
Not
Go
even
on,
death itself.
Caroll.
I don't
Must be the
actually.
Jamaican.
It's true. It must be the Jamaican, but I don't. I have no fear. You know, I would say to, you know, my mum always says to me, "It's a good job you were born in the century you were born into, because you would have been dead long time," right? Because I'm fearless, right? And which is true. I am. I think, why should I fear?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I think that what happens to a lot of people, including I relate to it myself certainly, is that when people get hurt by life or relationships, we become fearful. And I think what's so unique about you is, I'm sure you have had experiences that have been hurtful.
Absolutely.
But yet you haven't allowed them to shut you down.
No way.
So how have you not done that? And I will wrap this up soon, because but how have you been able to, how do you coach yourself through a moment of, this feels hard, I feel hurt, I don't believe in anything, I'm feeling down, to carry on going?
Well, there's a lesson in everything. And that's it. There's a lesson in everything. So why am I in this position? How did I get into this position? How can I ensure that I'm not in this position again? And how can I ensure that this position does not determine my future? And that is how I analyse it.
And so if you were to take me through a day where you woke up feeling very low, how would it look? Would you start by putting on a Commodore song?
To be honest, if I wake up and I feel really low, I pray.
Yeah.
It's the first thing I do. I pray, and I pray that this spirit of whatever it is will just go back to the depths of where it came from.
Yeah.
And then I try and work out what was it that I didn't resolve the night before or the day before that is causing me this imbalance. And then I work out what it was. Was it something? Was it because I felt that I'm uncomfortable that maybe my son didn't achieve what he wanted to achieve? Was it that my husband said something to me that I thought he didn't have the right to say? Was it that I've got a bill that I can't pay and I'm not sure how I'm going to pay it? What is it that's throwing me off? And then once I analyse what's throwing me off, I then try and find a solution for it, and then tell myself, well, that's what it is. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just externally there's a couple of things that are not in the right position. There's nothing wrong with me.
And so I just want to thank you for that wisdom, because the whole purpose of this podcast is to talk about ways to get through those difficult moments in life. Because in real life, you know, behind the lights and the cameras, we have to get up every day and we have to keep going despite the problems.
Absolutely.
And so you've just given us a real nugget of wisdom and said, look, when you're feeling low, have a look at what's going on around in your life. Check yesterday, check the people that you were close to, see what may be going on there, and then try and find a solution.
Absolutely, that's the way. I mean, I also run a mental health choir. I've been doing it voluntarily for the last 10 years.
Wow.
So on a Wednesday between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, I run a mental health choir.
Where is that?
In Haringey for Mind.
Oh, really?
I used to do it in Brixton on Railton Road for a while at a centre there that my friend, who was also a psychologist, used to run it, and I did it for her there. And then I did another one in Wood Green. But over the years, whenever I have the time, I run these.
Wow, that's
these choirs.
really interesting. Is that
And
for anyone to attend?
That's for anyone who's registered in that particular service centre.
Okay.
Right, so it's not people that just come off the street. These are people who are part of the centre. So I do understand it, and I do understand, I think it's great what you're doing. I do understand the relevance and importance of music therapy. I remember there was one service user when I was on Railton Road in Brixton, and he'd walk in and he wouldn't say a word to anybody. He was completely dishevelled, he's inside himself. And the minute I would play Bob Marley, Three Little Birds is a special song, and I'd play Bob Marley, Three Little Birds, and he would just come alive. And he'd get up his hanky and start do all this kind of stuff, because he's like, he was an old dread, right? And then he'd sing Three Little Birds, and they start to DJ and blah 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 blah. Brother said, lift up your foot down, come Ethiopia, all kinds of stuff. It's like he thought he was in Phoebe's or something, right? And then the minute the music finished, he'd be back like this.
Yeah.
And that's when I saw the power of music, and how some people are not able, through their wiring a lot of the time, chemical wiring, able to just lift themselves out of stuff.
Access that shift.
And that's why I feel blessed. I pray constantly. And I'm in touch with my spirituality, because I recognize that once the soul is separated from the spirit, you end up in that zone.
Absolutely.
And
Every time.
every time. So I ensure, because I'm cognizant enough and I've been blessed with that ability, not to abuse that, and to ensure that I get myself centered every time, because for some reason I have been given that clarity to do that.
Yes, you have. In you being given that clarity, you are also helping others.
Yeah.
To just be with very powerful feelings through your music. And so we appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
So Caroll, I have a set of questions for you.
Okay.
I call this the quick fire round. I don't want you to think too much.
Okay.
I know it's going to be a challenge
Very
for you.
challenge,
I've
very
already
challenging.
understood that about you. But just go with your heart. I know you
Okay.
can do that really, really well.
All right.
And let's see what happens.
All right, let's go.
Okay. So Stevie Wonder,
Yes.
and you've worked with Stevie Wonder.
Yes.
He has this song, Isn't She Lovely, which we all loved, and that's about his daughter's birth.
Right.
So what song reminds you of someone who's really special to you?
A song called Cherry Oh Baby,
Yeah.
because my mother's pet name is Cherry. And so whenever I do my live shows and I do a little rock steady bit in it, I always sing Cherry Oh Baby. And if she happens to be at my shows, she will always come up and dance with me.
Oh, that's so nice.
Because she likes to dance.
Alanis Morissette had a song called You Learn, You Live, You Learn. What 2 things have you learned about love in the last 5 years that you didn't know about love before?
I've learnt that love is truly everything. And love is patience. And love is kindness.
So Secret Lovers, you remember that, was a breakthrough hit by Atlantic Star.
Oh, yeah.
And as was Saving All My Love for You, great hit for
Whitney.
Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
And then there's a hip hop version, OPP. All these songs are about infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
What can we learn about love from infidelity?
That the grass isn't always greener. Sometimes it's brown grass on the other side.
Very, very that grass dirty on the other side. All right. So, Ed Sheeran recently did a song, Thinking Out Loud. Lovely song.
Yes.
When my hands aren't, when I can't play the guitar anymore, I still love you.
Nice lyrics.
I know you will love me the same, you know. Is it possible for a couple to sustain their desire long term in a relationship?
I believe if you are one of those very fortunate people in life where your lives and life's journey move in parallel, like my parents, then my father died 2 years ago and my mother was still very much in love with my father, and I know before my father died he was very much still in love with my mother.
Beautiful, and I really love to hear that. So Tell It Like It Is, one of my favourite songs by Aaron Neville. He's basically saying, just be honest. That seems to be the core value of that song. Just tell it how it is. What's your core value in a relationship?
Honesty and space.
Space. Okay. It's hard to leave that one alone. I would love to hear more. Okay. Al Green did a song called School Days. Beautiful song about school days. I didn't. Yeah. It's a nostalgic song about the joys of childhood. How did your childhood play a role in who and how you choose a partner?
I think the only thing I say that was important in me choosing a partner was knowing that I had been loved, so I knew what love was and what it wasn't.
I hear that. So Me, Myself and I is a Beyonce song.
Right.
She says that's all I've got in the end.
Yeah.
How do you stay connected to yourself when you're in a relationship?
Comes back to being honest about who you are and not compromising about who you are, and so that your partner will move towards who you are and you not pretending to be something that you're not, so you're confusing the relationship. The
original of I Am Telling You.
Oh yes.
Covered by Jennifer Hudson. She says, I am staying and you're gonna love me.
Wow.
Right? That's it. Bottom line, right? What do expectations do to relationships?
But it depends on what the expectations are and what they're formulated on and from what perspective. I don't think you have the right to demand anybody to love you. Period. You can't demand that in a love relationship. You can put yourselves out and say, well, do we want to love each other? And you can't make somebody love you. That's just a real moment, but it's transient.
Yeah.
It's not a real thing. It's a moment, a wave of a thought, and then after that it has to move on. That person has to come to you freely. It's impossible.
Gospel music,
Yes.
and so one of my favourite songs is Amazing Grace,
Okay.
because it's that journey we
Yeah.
make from being lost to being found. And I think sometimes I make that journey every hour, but anyway. What is your favourite gospel song and why?
Roll back the curtains of memories now and then. Show me where I'm coming from and where I could have been. Remember, I'm only human and humans forget. So remind me, dear Lord.
You should have sang that, Caroll. It's not fair that you spoke it.
Those are the lyrics, and they're very important lyrics, and that's one of my favourite gospel songs. It's from an old American, it's called the American Sankey, which is an old sort of country gospel songbook, and which they had some very good white American writers back in the day, and that was one of the songs that always resonated with me from a very young age.
Well, that sounds lovely. I'm going to look it up.
Yes.
But
I think it's called Remind Me, Dear Lord.
Remind Me, Dear Lord.
Yeah.
I feel like we could definitely speak forever. I knew this was going to happen. This is not even all of my notes, and I just didn't get through half of them, and I knew it was going to happen, but
No
it's
problem.
nice to leave them wanting more.
Yeah,
That's my motto to the boys anyway.
Yeah, it works every time.
Works every time. But honestly, it's been a pleasure, and I'm so glad to have met you.
Likewise,
Thank
I've
you.
totally enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
It's been worth it.